Mr. Jones and me are all trying to figure out what the Colts are doing with their quarterback. We'll answer those questions. Cardinal questions. Is Malik really a better option than Kyler? And the greatest rivalry in college basketball just days away. We'll break it down with the next one. Yahoo Sports Daily starts right now. She's Caroline Benton. I'm Jason Fitz. For the next 2 hours, we are rack stacked to pack to get you ready on everything that you need to know. It is time for Yahoo Sports Daily from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Caroline, we've got a lot to get into. It is a wildly packed show, but we start with the NBA because we had a big night last night. We went into last night knowing that we were going to get a prove-it opportunity yet again between two of the best teams in the East. Cleveland comes out on top of Detroit 113-109 just a week ago, less than a week ago. We saw these two teams play. Now we get them again. What did we learn in the process, my friend?
I learned that the Cavs made a massive statement. And just when I was ready to fully cement the Cavs in that, in my mental fourth place in the East, the Cavs come out and they have a performance like that with no Donovan Mitchell. When Jared Allen leaves 20 minutes in with a, knee-to-knee injury, when James Harden doesn't look 100%, when you could tell that the thumb injury was really bothering him, they're obviously not at full strength, and the Cavs are able to make a statement like that. I thought it was wildly impressive. Now, I don't want to overreact to just one result, but I mean, at this point in the season, I think that certain results weigh more than others. So I think it was a massive statement from the Cavs. I think the other thing too, Fitz, that I would be disappointed in or concerned about if I was a Pistons fan. I mean, obviously, lackluster shooting night. Offense was hard to come by. Cade Cunningham didn't look 100%. Like, Cade Cunningham definitely looked gassed in that game last night. But we heard just a couple of days ago reports that came out that the Cavs locker room said that the Pistons aren't in the same league as us. The Pistons can't compete with us. The Pistons can't this. The Pistons aren't this, blah, 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 blah. All of these reports came out. So when I hear this, I'm thinking, uh-oh, like I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't poke the bear if I were you, because I thought that was going to be ultimate bulletin board material in Detroit. I thought that they were going to come out with the thunder of the gods in that matchup last night. That they were going to say, oh, you don't think that we're in the same league as you? Oh, that's cute. That's funny. But they didn't. And we're talking about a physical team, a tough team, a gritty team, a team that we on this show several times have compared to those bad boy Pistons after their Bedlam at the Spectrum little outburst against the Charlotte Hornets a couple of weeks ago. So I was surprised to see the Pistons come out as flat as they did last night. Now, I don't think we're going to see a consistently bad shooting night from Cade Cunningham like we saw last night. Consistently bad shooting night that we saw pretty much from that entire Pistons roster. Like, that's I think more the exception than it is the rule to that Pistons team. But the fact remains that I do feel like this Cavs team is just a little bit of a bugaboo for this Detroit Pistons team. And if I'm a Pistons fan, I'm incredibly concerned about that and what that means for the postseason.
Well, look, I'm concerned about the way Cade Cunningham is playing against the Cavs this year. In the 4 games against the Cavs, he's averaging 19 points a game and 34% from the floor. Not good. Not good for an MVP candidate. But also, I think if there's anything that I've learned, it's that, to me, these two teams are going to be a flip of the coin if they meet in the playoffs. Because throughout the course of this year, now they're 2-2 in their 4-game series. But on top of that, we'll take the October outcome out because October was so long ago, which Cleveland did win convincingly. The 3 games since then, in January, February, March, this calendar year, we have a 4-point win for Detroit, a 3-point win in overtime for Detroit, and now a 4-point win for Cleveland. Let's not turn – and I know this is where, Cleveland didn't have all their players yesterday, and they could have had a much better opportunity to kill them if they'd had more health, which you could say about the last game too. But realistically, that's just part of the way this NBA season goes. So, to me, what we've seen is that these two teams are going to play what's going to turn out to be a 4 or 5-point game. That's the way it comes down. So it's going to come down to over and over and over again the little nuances if they meet in the playoffs. That's why I take all of this, I crumple it up, and I say this is really fun regular season basketball that really means nothing if these two teams are facing each other in the playoffs. Part of it is because in this moment, what are we going to do with Detroit going into the playoffs? We're going to do what we do with every young team that's better than we expected them to be. The argument's going to be, well, we haven't seen them do it in the playoffs. Playoff basketball is so much different than regular season basketball. We use that to fault the Pistons because we haven't seen them go through this gauntlet in the playoffs. That's fine. We're going to, for the Cavs, I think rightfully so, remind everybody that, my God, you better not get into a Game 7 with James Harden, because if you do, you're screwed, right? There's a fatal flaw to each side of these teams in the playoff argument. That's why I keep looking at it, Caroline, and I say, look, at the end of the day, the 3 matchups we've gotten this calendar year have all come down to the last minute and a half of the game. Give this to me. Inject this in my veins. I want this. This is proof positive of how good and how evenly matched, I should say, I think the top teams in the East are actually going to end up being when this whole thing is said and done.
But they're 2-2 in their 4 meetings this year. If we just take the 4 meetings that they've had so far this season and we transpose that into a postseason matchup, like, we are on the trajectory for a 7-game series. And to your point, a very evenly matched 7-game series. So sign me up for this. I would 100% love to see this Pistons-Cavs matchup in the postseason. But I also would be careful what you wish for, I think, if you're Cleveland. Because I think Cavs fans are waking up today, swaggy walking, feeling this level, this sense of invincibility. When we were all ready to crown the Pistons the kings of the East, when, we were all ready to write off Cade Cunningham as league MVP, and all of those things still very much so can be true. One bad game from Cade Cunningham and one loss from Detroit doesn't completely unravel and undo all of those things. But I'm sure Cleveland, knowing how much positive talk has been surrounding this Detroit Pistons team, Cleveland's waking up. If you're a Cleveland fan, if you're a Cleveland Cavalier waking up this morning, you're like, yeah, that was a statement. And it was 100%. But I also think that there's just a level of physicality that this Pistons team is going to ratchet up in the postseason that we just didn't see last night. Because you've been playing a lot of games, everybody's a little bit banged up, everyone's tired, and yeah, we can make excuses for anyone on any given night. I totally and completely understand that, but I want to see the level of physicality between these two teams in the postseason. But Fitz, you bring up fatal flaws for these teams. If I'm the Pistons, and if you're a Pistons fan, I am terrified of this team's ability to shoot the 3. They were 9-24 from 3 last night. When you have Cade Cunningham 9-24 from 3 last night. Cade Cunningham over 3 from beyond the arc. And you look at the rest of the teams in the East. Let's just look at Cleveland last night. Jalen Tyson, 5 of 12 from 3. This team as a whole, 17 of 46. Even though the threes weren't falling, they were still taking that sheer number of threes. Jalen Tyson shooting almost 50% from 3 this season. And then you look at Boston. We know that Boston wants to shoot the 3. You look at New York. You know how they are able to shoot the 3. That if you look at the landscape of this East, I don't know if, even with all of the physicality, even with Cade Cunningham looking like the league MVP, even though Detroit can play a level of defense that has been wildly impressive, if Detroit can't figure out a way to more consistently shoot and make threes, this Pistons team will not come out of the East. That, I think, revealed itself last night. That, the ultimate fatal flaw of this team is their ability to shoot from beyond the arc. I am terrified of that if I'm a Pistons fan.
I'm also, for the Pistons, terrified of who the other guy is going to be that steps up, right? Like, I think to have a long playoff run, you've got to have somebody else that can pop off on a night where somebody's just cold, because that's going to happen throughout the course of the playoffs. So, if we're giving a little bit of credit here to the Cavs, by the way, that's one thing I do love about the Cavs. Donovan Mitchell, Harden, Garland, these are all guys that can go off any given night. They can have a massive night. So if you shut everything else down or somebody's cold, there is a path to victory that doesn't involve one superstar. What concerns me about the Pistons is I don't see somebody that I think can reliably take over 3, 4, 5 games over the course of a long playoff run. That's part of why I constantly, I think, champion the depth of teams like Oklahoma City. It's part of why I like a team like Denver. It's part of why I respect, whatever the Celtics are going to be whenever Tatum comes back, because it gives them a secondary option that can take over on any given night. The Pistons lack that to me. So, as much as, yes, Cade Cunningham has been absolutely great, I'm not looking at Tobias Harris or Jalen Duren as a guy that I think night in and night out is going to turn around and win you big games that you need won. So I'm concerned. So let's power rank the East as we sit right now. The top 4 teams in the East, where do you have this rank? Like, if we're looking at the Cavs, we're looking at the Knicks, we're looking at the Celtics, we're looking at the Pistons. Give me your sort of power ranking of those 4 teams.
I still have the Pistons as my number 1 team in the East. I know that feels crazy and weird after the night that they had last night, but again, I'm not letting myself overreact to one late regular season game. The Pistons still, like, if I had to bet today who I think is coming out of the East, I'm still riding with Detroit. But that gap between 1 and 2 is shrinking dramatically by the day, because my number 2 team in the East is the Celtics. And I was very tempted to put the Celtics as my number 1 team, and how hot they are and how much better I believe they're going to be once Jason Tatum joins the fold. I still am going to, hold my breath a little bit there and think that there might be a ramping up period 9 months removed from an Achilles tear, but I digress. With Jason Tatum, without Jason Tatum, the Celtics are playing an absolutely terrifying version of basketball. So it's Pistons 1, Celtics 2, but it almost feels 1A, 1B, because that's how thin the margins are. When I did this exercise, I initially had the Knicks at 3. Watching what the Cavs did last night, I was so tempted to bump the Cavs up to 3, but then I saw the defensive clinic that the Knicks put on last night, and I'm thinking, okay, well, can I really, knock the Knicks for that? So I have Knicks 3, I have Cavs 4, but again, same thing with the Pistons and the Celtics. I don't view 3 and 4 as being some massive margin between those two. In fact, I think the margin, at least in my own mind and my own personal power rankings, the margins between 1 and 4 are incredibly thin. We're talking about a razor thin margin between any of these teams, because I power ranked the Pistons 1 and the Cavs 4, and the Cavs just beat the Pistons last night. That's how evenly matched I view the entire top 4 of the East, but that's how I would lay it out. Pistons, Celtics, Knicks, Cavs, all bunched up right there between one another.
The funny thing is we agree with almost everything that as you laid it out, but we come to different rankings through the same exact process, because I will power rank at this point the Celtics at number 1, just a hair above the Pistons. And part of this, look, the Celtics are 4.5 games back of the Pistons right now without Tatum. So you bring in Tatum, I think that will make, while you're right, there will be an adjustment period. If I'm looking at where I think these teams will fall, I would put the Celtics ahead of that. Also, by the way, not for nothing, the Celtics and the Pistons are both 8-2 in their last 10 games, and their point differentiation right now is 7.9 versus 7.8. So when we're talking about 2 wildly evenly matched teams the way they're playing today. But I could say the same thing about the Knicks and the Cavs, who, by the way, are 7-3 in their last 10, both of those respective teams, and both have a similar point differentiation. So I look at some of the ways that we separate these 4 teams, and to me, they're all really cloudy. It's all just shoved in together. I could make the but I'm not sure that I trust the Knicks night in, night out to actually be able to beat the best of the best. I think they're sort of frauds in this conversation. But I also don't trust Harden at all in a playoff series. I will say that till I'm blue in the face. I do not trust I would not bet my money on the Cavs being able to win an NBA championship with James Harden, because I don't trust Harden in a big series. I don't. What's the difference, or what's the process going to look like for Tatum coming back? Who's the secondary scorer for the Pistons? There's a big but for each of them.
I will give the Cavs so much credit in this. Last season, the Cavs looked like one of the best teams in the regular season, and once they got into the postseason, they just crumbled. They didn't have that edge. They didn't have that secret sauce that you need to get through the grind of a postseason. What I saw last night, and I don't know how that's going to come to fruition in the postseason. All bets are off once you get into the playoffs. What I saw last night was an edge. What I saw last night was a little bit more of that toughness, of that physicality, a little bit more of that postseason magic that I feel like this iteration of the Cavs has. And kudos to the roster construction for that. That last year's iteration of the Cavs was ultimately their fatal flaw in the postseason.
Yeah, but if I need to fix my team in the playoffs, adding Harden doesn't fix my team in the playoffs. We're putting collapse on top of collapse. I'm out on the Cavs.
But the Cavs are better with James Harden.
Yeah, they are 100%. But playoff basketball is different. We say it all the time. All right, plenty more to break down from the NBA. It was a wild night last night, and a wild night coming up tonight also. But coming up, we got wild news yesterday from the Colts. A surprising decision by many. What does the transition tag actually tell us for Daniel Jones? We'll give you that answer next.
Who's the dream fight? Like, who's the final boss for you?
Now anyway.
Yeah, that's the one, huh?
Yeah, I feel like he's the guy.
What a freaking fight that would be.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
How far away do you think you are from this, like, maybe being a thing?
I would say maybe a year.
Yeah.
Maybe just a year away. Yeah, it's
Is the
right
dream
there.
to try to, like, get more belts so that entices him to come after you? Okay.
100%. He's going to get a wake-up call fighting a guy like me.
And Kenneth Walker wins Super Bowl MVP.
The way he's kind of molded his game to work for him has been fun because it's such a hard turn from where he started. Sometimes it feels like a more dramatic version of like how Le'Veon Bell used to run the ball, how Le'Veon would stop and wait and see things open. But Le'Veon, like, he was hugging the ass of his centers and his guards. Kenneth is he's like step back so he can see the whole picture open up. And then when it hits, he's off.
The Sixers, to me, are the biggest loser of the trade deadline. You get these middling picks for Jared McCain, one of your most promising young players, to duck the tax. Just a joke. If I'm a Sixers fan, I'm infuriated. The Sixers, losers this trade deadline. It's just so disappointing for Philadelphia, man.
Who in college football could experience that same level of redemption arc? And I was thinking, we've actually kind of seen it a little bit in the past. I'd say Jaden Daniels did. Remember when his teammates were like throwing his things out of his locker and talking trash about him when he left Arizona State, and then he goes and wins the Heisman at LSU?
It was a little bit of a turnaround. I wonder what those guys are doing now.
The Colts are placing the transition tag on Daniel Jones. According to sources, that's now happened. The sides have been in negotiations on a multi-year contract. Those talks will continue. The one-year transition tender is worth $37.8 million, gives Indy the right to match any offer sheet. For anyone that's not really familiar with the way transition tags and franchise tags work, there's a substantial difference, Caroline, because a franchise tag, when you give somebody the full franchise tag, you have different versions of that even. It gives you the opportunity to get something back in return. So what this comes down to is really simple. The transition tag is for less money than the franchise tag would be. And to make it as simple as possible, if somebody else were to sign Daniel Jones, the Colts have the chance to either match that or simply let him walk away. If he walks away, they get nothing. If they match it, they keep him. So they protect themselves a little bit, but they also essentially tell their quarterback, hey, go out there and go ahead and test the market.
Yeah. And I knew that the writing was on the wall probably with Indianapolis and Daniel Jones. It doesn't make me like it, Fitz. I don't like this one bit for Indianapolis. I don't know what else they were supposed to do, but they also put themselves in this position. And I'll explain. I don't like it because there are so many quarterback needy teams across the NFL, and there has been so much smoke around so many teams in the NFL that would be interested in the efforts of Daniel Jones. We keep hearing the Minnesota Vikings, right? A team and a coaching staff that Daniel Jones is wildly familiar with. What's stopping the Minnesota Vikings from swooping in and offering $40 million to Daniel Jones? So now, not only are the Colts in a bidding war for a quarterback that I'm not even really quite sure is a starting franchise quarterback in the National Football League, but now the Colts no longer hold the control. The Colts now no longer have, any sort of rights to Daniel Jones. Now they're in a bidding war with a guy that we don't even know how many games he's going to be able to play this year. He's not healthy. I mean, he broke his leg midway through the season. So I think that, yeah, sure, you save, about $6 million? I believe the franchise tag for a quarterback this season is around $43 million. So you save $6 million, but now what you don't get is a certain level of certainty, knowing and understanding, because if you know, the Colts certainly know, that there are plenty of teams across the National Football League that would be willing to spend $40 million on Daniel Jones. Which brings me to the second reason why I don't like it. Are we sure about Daniel Jones? Are we sure about this? Because sure, yeah, we saw Daniel Jones playing at an MVP caliber level in the first 7, 8 games of the season, give or take, a couple of games, whatever the exact number was. We also have a 4, 5-year sample size of Daniel Jones getting coaches and general managers fired in the National Football League. For how long was Daniel Jones synonymous with suck in the NFL? Daniel Jones had one good season that got the Giants to the postseason a couple of years ago. That was good enough for the Giants to say, we are willing to tag Daniel Jones and pay him $40 million and let Saquon Barkley walk. Were the Colts not going to learn from the Giants' mistake? Because now that they're placing the transition tag on Daniel Jones, they can't tag Alec Pierce. So are they going to sign Alec Pierce to a long-term deal, or are they going to let Alec Pierce walk in free agency? So now you don't have certainty on Alec Pierce. Now you don't even have certainty on Daniel Jones. But let's say Daniel Jones does come back to Indianapolis next year. Now you're paying $40 million to a quarterback that you don't know will be 100% healthy at the beginning of the season. You don't know when he'll be 100% healthy. And I'm not really convinced that a 7 to 8 game sample size of Daniel Jones this past season is really what Daniel Jones is moving forward, because we have a much larger sample size of Daniel Jones not looking like a starting quarterback in the NFL than we do Daniel Jones looking like a starting quarterback in the NFL. And I think there's going to be a whole lot of general managers in the NFL that get themselves in a tizzy tying up all of this money in the Daniel Jones of the world, because everyone is searching for the next Sam Darnold. This is a copycat league in the NFL. Everybody wants to find the next reclamation project. But are we really sure that the next Sam Darnold truly exists in the NFL? Or was Sam Darnold just, the exception to the rule?
I look at all of this and think we got here because clearly the team and the player don't agree on value. Like, the oversimplification here is that they started a negotiation that they thought would be a long-term deal. They didn't get a long-term deal done. Daniel Jones says, fine, I'm going to test the market. Well, the Colts say, okay, we'll let you test the market. And if it comes in an area we like, then we'll bring you back. And if it doesn't, we won't. They are really telling you here, in my mind, that they're willing to tempt the fates of the gods. They're telling you that Daniel Jones is the answer, but only at the right cost, which I don't necessarily fault the answer, Caroline, but I think that we have to look at this and understand what happens next. Okay, so one of three things happens. Daniel Jones doesn't get an offer anywhere, and you got him at the $38 million. Okay, huzzah, great. Now you got to figure out a long-term deal. The other side of it is he does get an offer from somewhere, and that offer is for enough that all of a sudden they have no choice but to go out and make sure that they match it, which puts him in an overpaid position. Or they sign him, and then all of a sudden, in the process of that, if he goes out next year on the transition tag and has a great year, now they're going to have to still figure out what to do with their quarterback, who, by the way, isn't even going to be healthy until late into this season. So it's almost like they're kicking everything down the road and saying, hey, unless somebody else wants to come in and give you stupid money, we don't want to give you stupid money. It's a strange strategy in that sense if you believe that Daniel Jones is your long-term future. It also speaks to what is clearly a disagreement between Daniel Jones' camp and the Colts camp on what his value is. And at the end of the day, this is the Colts saying, hey, you think somebody will pay you more? Go find it. The only problem with that is when you play chicken at the quarterback position, you might end up with a situation where you don't have a quarterback. Remember, they've already told Anthony Richardson they're good letting Anthony Richardson go look for a trade. Now they're telling Daniel Jones, yeah, you could go shop yourself and see what else is out there. This makes me wonder if the Colts are going to put themselves in the quarterback market next week, because certainly they have to have somebody that they believe will be their starting quarterback week one. Because of injury, it already wasn't going to be Daniel Jones. But because of this sort of weird situation they're in where they're letting him go out to the highest bidder, I just wonder if we're going to find out that the Colts are in the market for one of these other guys.
And you mentioned, you playing chicken at the quarterback position. I think that's a very scary place to be, especially when the demand far outweighs the supply this season in the NFL. But what's the Colts' choice? Let's say they do play chicken. Let's say the Vikings do come in with a $40 million deal. The Colts put themselves in this position. They have no other path to a quarterback. They traded their next 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner. At that moment, they hitched their wagon to Daniel Jones for at least the next, at least the next 2, if not the next 3 years. So they don't have a choice. If they get into a bidding war with whatever team, I've heard the Vikings, makes sense. We heard so much, smoke about the Vikings not being pleased with J.J. McCarthy, with the Vikings wanting to bring in a veteran quarterback. Let's say it's the Vikings. Makes a lot of sense. they will get into a bidding war with the Vikings. And somebody, I believe it's the Colts, will be forced to overpay. If they're not already overpaying for Daniel Jones at $38 million, they will be forced to overpay even more because they don't have another path to another quarterback. I hate this for the Colts. I hate that this is the decision that they had to make, but they have no other choice. They backed themselves into this corner.
It'll be interesting to see with free agency coming. Legal tampering opens Monday. Signing starts Wednesday. So we have about a week to figure out what some of these quarterback situations look like. Speaking of having about a week.
I hate the term legal tampering.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have legal tampering, right? But whatever we want to call it. Open negotiation window starts. I will say it that way. But speaking of deadlines, we are right up against the WNBA deadlines towards having a collective bargaining agreement done with the Players Association. Remember, that deadline has been imposed by the league as March 10th to have the season played without interruption. And yesterday we got a wild report from ESPN, great reporting from multiple reporters talking about a letter that was written from Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart, two of the biggest names in the WNBA right now. It was acquired by ESPN. It was a letter to the WNBPA executive, Terry Jackson, that expresses, this is, quote, serious concerns about how the PA is handling the current negotiation. They talked about lack of communication with the players. They talked about whether or not they should be negotiating from the offer from the league. This was the first time we've seen the proverbial crack in the armor, Caroline, as these negotiations always get hairy. And now you have the owners who are sitting over here, at least from the outside looking in, unified, which is what we thought of the players. But 24 hours ago, when this report became public, that sudden unification is now in question.
There has been a shift in public sentiment and in like feeling and vibe, for lack of a better word, throughout these negotiations. If we want to go back to last summer, to last fall, pre the initial deadline, the October 31st initial deadline, it felt like the players were so unified, while the league itself and the owners were just trying to kind of dot their I's and cross their T's. It felt like there was so much support from the fan base, from the WNBA world, from the basketball world, backing the players. Exactly. Pay your players. Pay them what you owe them. And while I do think there's a huge fraction of people that want everybody to feel like, I think pretty much everybody wants everybody to feel like they're getting what they deserve. The players feel like they get what they deserve. The league gets what they need in order to, continue a business model, to stay in the black. But it feels like there's been this shift that the owners now feel far more unified than the players do. That there's been this more public backing for the league and this kind of frustration with the players of like, just get this done. We want a season. We want games to be played. We don't want there to be a delay. And if you look at the WNBA calendar, it's tight. It's packed. It's pretty jam-packed over the next month and some change. You have 2 expansion drafts, or at least a draft for 2 expansion teams. You have the collegiate draft that's coming up. And also, I don't know if anybody's looked at their calendar, it's March. The basketball world's pretty busy in the month of March. So you have all of these things that need to be done. You have a training camp that needs to go off. You have all of these things that need to be done. And we don't even know what the players are going to be making this next year. We don't even know how long the next PA is going to be. You have a pretty long to-do list. So you have all of these fans that are now feeling the pressure and feeling the heat of the potential of a delayed season, or maybe not even a season altogether. So there's been a massive shift, I believe, or at least that I feel, in where in public sentiment and unification. It does feel now that you have 2 leaders in the WNBA, not just in feeling, not just in the number of years that they've served in this league, but Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart both serve on the board for the WNBPA. And we have both of them coming out and expressing a certain sentiment that feels different than maybe some sentiments that we've heard from other leaders in the WNBPA. I talked to myself and Cassandra Nugly, my co-host on Hoops 360. We talked to Nafisa Collier about a week or so ago, a couple of weeks ago. And she said, if we have to miss games, then so be it. We want to get this thing right. But now we have a different sentiment coming from other leaders in the WNBPA. There's been a fracture. There's been a different sentiment coming from the leaders in the Players Association, which I think is a very, very dangerous place to be, an uncomfortable place to be, when you have different messaging coming from the leadership that exists in the Players Association on March 4th?
This is a byproduct of just some simple facts in collective bargaining, though. Like, to me, because you're right, all of this looks like we suddenly see a different level of unification. But we should stress here, there are 13 teams in the WNBA, right? So expansion is going to bring a couple more. But so you're talking about, let's say, roughly 15 ownership groups that have to be unified. 15 ownership groups that are mostly billionaires that own multiple businesses need to be unified together. As of right now, there's about 150 players in the WNBPA. That means that you need 150 players to be as unified as 13 owners. 150 players that are at a much different financial spectrum than where the owners are. Some of these players, there are some stars that are making plenty of money and they don't have to worry about anything. But there are plenty of players in the W that frankly have to worry about how they're going to pay their bills coming up, right? So this is why this is always an issue. And we talk about it in the NFL all the time. In the NFL, you have a couple thousand players in the NFLPA versus 32 NFL owners. I saw Jeff Passan yesterday, tweeting about the understanding that, hey, baseball fans, look at this. These are things that we need to keep in mind when you start talking about baseball negotiations with the upcoming collective bargaining agreement happening there, because at the end of the day, there are thousands of players in a players union typically, and there's only, depending on your league, anywhere from 15 to 32 team owners. It's much easier to keep 30 people or 15 people in this WNBA case that all make sort of the same amount of money, that are all in that same private jet lifestyle. You keep them unified to a business purpose is simply easier. So to me, what's really telling here is that two of the biggest names in the sport right now, and a legend like Breanna Stewart, by the way, for the sport overall, you've got two of the biggest names coming out saying, we're not being heard enough. But they're not saying that to the owners. They're saying that to their own union. They're not saying that to the teams. They're not saying that to the press. They're saying that to their own representative that is representing them in negotiations. That, to me, is a telling moment where you have some of the faces of the league speaking up for some of the other members of the union. That's why it's perceived as a crack in the armor, whether it is or it isn't. Just the minor detail of them in writing saying we should be negotiating off of the most recent owner's offer, not off of our own offers, tells you that they understand, hey, we're in a situation here where we need to get things done. So I don't look at the crack in the armor, as we keep calling it, as weakness. I look at it as understanding. I, on this show, have sat back many times and said, I'm not sure the players understand the damage that would be done by a lockout. This, to me, is one of those first indicators where we actually do have players looking around saying, wait a minute. We got to think long and hard about this, because what damage will this do? Right or wrong, in the court of public opinion, what damage will missed games actually do for their wallets, for the popularity of the sport, for the way people view everybody in this process, Caroline? I think that's the devil's in the details here, and the details are showing us that the players are within their own group starting to ask questions they don't feel they're getting answers from their own representation.
And that's what deadlines do, right? We have the proposed deadline from the WNBA of March 10th of, look, if we don't get the CBA signed, we will miss games. Deadlines breed urgency. And I think now, more so than ever, and this letter is the example of that, is proof of that the WNBPA, the Players Association, the players themselves are feeling the heat of that deadline and are understanding the gravity of missing games, how detrimental that could and will be to the league. That we have Women's Sports Sundays coming up on Sunday evenings in the summer on ESPN. That is the largest investment that any cable network has made to women's sports ever, period, in history. That is such a wonderful opportunity for the WNBA to take the amount of growth that they have had over the last couple of years and compound that and grow it even more. Having a platform like that, I think, is exactly the next step that the WNBA needs to make in their trajectory of growth. That we now have household names in this league, that the league is getting covered more than it ever has been, that the league has been invested into more than ever, that we have 2 expansion teams coming into the league in 2026 and 3 more until 2030. That is growth, that is popularity, that is money, that is financial investment. But none of it matters if you don't have eyeballs on your sport. So that's what they're getting this season on ESPN. Eyeballs on your sport. Invaluable real estate. But none of that matters if you miss games. And it's not just a WNBA thing. Ask baseball. Go back to 1994 in Major League Baseball, how detrimental that was to the sport of baseball that didn't really get right until Long Gone Summer. And that was like an unprecedented amount of star power and intrigue where you're finally getting the viewership up. You were finally getting attendance up in the ballparks. So that was the span of 5 years where baseball was just kind of trying to find its way. We're talking about baseball here. I love women's basketball. I love the WNBA, but let's not kid ourselves. The WNBA is not on the same level as Major League Baseball. So what this shows me is a level of understanding from the players that, look, we want something. We want this target number and revenue share. If the league's not going to budge, then we're going to have to budge. Because what helps our bottom line more than anything is playing basketball, far more than playing hardball in negotiations.
March 10th is right around the corner, and up until then, we'll keep you updated on every twist and turn in these negotiations. Coming up next, from the WNBA to college basketball, that man clutching his pearls about Miami of Ohio, but maybe there's some bias. We'll tell you about it.
Peterson looked like the clear-cut number one pick in the first half of that game. He looked like the clear-cut number one pick. The fluidity on the floor, the ease in which he moved off ball defensively, creating havoc. He looked majestic.
Sometimes it just comes down to as simple as, like, this dude moves the way basketball players are born to move. Was Kevin Durant the last college scorer that made it look as effortless?
Did you go to the casino after the fight?
Hell yeah.
How'd you do?
We're up.
Up?
We're up.
Well done.
We're up.
Were you just walking around there after the fight and people recognizing you? Like, weren't you the guy that was just on the UFC?
Yeah, that's where I get recognized the most.
Really?
What's that
say?
The other gambling keygens, everyone recognizes me there. Anywhere else I go, no one knows me. But if I go there, everyone points me out.
The 72 Dolphins is infamously the no-name defense. This one's the too many name defense.
Too many names,
too many names.
Defenses were ahead of offenses this season for a lot of it. Like the best teams in the NFL had the best defenses. We're sitting here talking about this defense and how good it was and how hard it is to isolate one player. And yeah, that's the sport of football. It's a team sport. It's hard to isolate individual players, and Seattle really exemplified that all year.
We're ranking the actual threats from the absolute frauds.
Your contenders, who do you got?
My contenders. So I have Sporting, and I say that because they have had a strong top 8 finish over some other heavyweight teams. They're actually very, very hard to break down as a squad, and they're very, very strong in transition.
And they got a guy named Luis Suarez, which is fun. Just
guard your ears.
It's National Sons Day. Who knew? There's like a day for everything, but it is National Sons Day, which is important for us because we have a little bit of a father-son parent bond going on here, bringing us straight to Bruce Pearl. All right, current college basketball commentator, former coach of the Auburn Tigers, where Stephen Pearl now serves. Remember, Bruce was the coach there, stepped away, and then all of a sudden, boom, immediately his son became the head coach, which was not without its own controversy in the moment. But Bruce is now taking some heat online for comments he made about Miami of Ohio when he said, quote, "If we're selecting the 68 best teams, then Miami is going to have to win their tournament to qualify as a champion because as an at-large, they are not one of the best teams in the country." Some people wondering, Caroline, if this is about Miami of Ohio or if this is maybe displacement a little bit as he looks at his son's team for Auburn that's squarely on the bubble, trying to find their way in. Lenardi's got Auburn as the part of the last 4 out sort of process. So all of a sudden we're looking at this. We got arguments. We got Miami of Ohio's AD tweeting in, "You're flat out wrong about Miami of Ohio when you say we would finish last in the Big East. The disrespect is awful, and you should not be near a TV studio covering the sport when you show your true colors." Even slipped in a "we" when talking about Auburn. Nice work. How do we feel about this? Come on.
I love the drama, first of all. Adore this. I'm always here for athletic directors throwing shots at, former head coaches whose sons are coaching their former team. And he's also on TV covering games and covering the sport on Twitter. Here for it. And it's only March 4th, guys. We have so much time left for more drama and for things to get a little bit more messy. I will not always be the first person to defend Bruce Pearl, but allow me to be one that defends him today. Everyone is saying Bruce Pearl is saying that Miami shouldn't make the tournament if they don't win their conference tournament, and he's doing that because Auburn is on the bubble, and if Miami of Ohio is a bid thief, then that could leave Auburn on the outside looking in. And look, all of those things are true. And if Auburn doesn't want to be left vulnerable on the bubble, maybe they should not lose to Oklahoma and Ole Miss and barely beat a terrible LSU team. And maybe Auburn should be just a little bit better than 11th in the SEC. I believe they're below 500, and they're pretty far below 500 in SEC play. That if you don't want to be vulnerable, I don't know, maybe win your basketball games. Just a crazy thought. But Bruce Pearl's not the only person that's saying this. Everyone's mad at Bruce Pearl, not because of the sentiment, but because of the source. Because everyone believes that Bruce Pearl is just, publicly campaigning for his son's team and for his former team. There's probably a little bit of that involved here. Like, let's be honest, we all have just a wee bit of bias. But Bruce Pearl's not the only person saying this. In fact, Bruce Pearl's not the first person to say this. I was talking about this with college basketball coaches, former college basketball coaches, bracketologists. I was talking about this with bracketologists like 2 weeks ago about Miami of Ohio not getting into the postseason. But nobody was mad about that. Nobody had a public outrage. The Miami of Ohio athletic director wasn't tweeting at them when they said it. It's just because of the source. Now, look, Miami, it feels weird that we could potentially live in a world where a team that went undefeated in the regular season would miss out on the postseason altogether. But Miami of Ohio played like the 285th ranked strength of schedule this year. And when you play that light of a schedule, sometimes you have to do more than other teams that play a tougher strength of schedule just because you need to boost your resume a little bit. So Miami of Ohio, if you want to make the tournament, win your conference tournament. It's that simple. If you don't want to be left vulnerable, if you don't want to be on the bubble, if you don't want to be the source of debate on some of these Selection Sunday shows, just win your conference tournament. It's that easy.
Look, I continue to die on this hill of small conferences, mid-major conferences should no longer have a conference tournament. They should just have their regular season champion go to the NCAA tournament. It fixes all of this. Like the questions would be answered right now. Miami of Ohio would be in. And I realize conference tournaments make money, and that's why they do it. I understand all these things, but this is one of those moments where, don't hate the player, hate the game. So if a conference tournament's going to exist and it puts a team like Miami of Ohio at risk, that is not really my fault. That's their own conference to look in the mirror and say, are we doing the best thing to get our best team and reward our best teams by making sure they get into the tournament? There is no world that exists where suddenly Miami of Ohio loses their conference tournament and their conference now is a two-bid conference. That just ain't going to happen. So, to your point, I would say to both sides of this, if you didn't want to be part of this conversation, win your games. If you're Miami of Ohio, unfortunately, by the bird of the beast, you don't have any wiggle room. So you're going to have to win your conference tournament. Again, I would get rid of the conference tournament, but that's not the world we live in. If you're Auburn, my God, you've lost some big games to good teams, but you've also lost some games this year to bad teams. Now, this is where we can argue all day long. Well, a bad team in the SEC is better than anybody that Miami of Ohio is. Okay. It's again, don't hate the player, hate the game. It's not my fault you play in the SEC. If I use the same argument for Miami of Ohio that I use for Auburn, the answer is simple. Go win your games. I think Auburn gets a tremendous benefit of the doubt because of the conference they play in if they take advantage of it. If they can't take advantage of it, ain't my problem. At some point, this is a hard line for me because I want to be clear here. I do not believe that the tournament or the college football playoff or any sort of extra postseason activity should be a participation award. I don't think that we should turn around here and just, slow clap and say, well, it's real, you guys are undefeated and you belong in. 68 means 68. Give me the 68 best teams. That's what I want as a world. But that's not the world we live in. So to me, if Auburn wants to be in this tournament, well, hey, number one, you got time left. Go win the SEC tournament. If I'm saying to Miami of Ohio, go win your conference tournament, all right, Auburn, you want to get in? Go win the SEC tournament. Both of these teams, if they're left out, it will be their own faults in the end.
100%. Like, you're not going to hear me playing the world's tiniest violin for Auburn if they don't get into the NCAA tournament. But the difference there is it's not just because Auburn plays the grind of an SEC schedule. Auburn, in their non-conference schedule, they played Houston, they played Michigan, they played St. John's, they played NC State, they played Arizona, and they played Purdue. That, if that was your conference schedule, that would be a grind. I don't see Purdue or St. John's or Houston on Miami of Ohio's non-conference schedule. So when I'm saying that Miami of Ohio has to go win their conference tournament because they have to make up for their strength of schedule, Auburn doesn't have to make up for their strength of schedule. They have an absolute murderer's row of a schedule.
But that's their own doing. Like, they scheduled those games. Don't schedule those games. Like, I realize that we sit
but
here
it's
and say
also Miami of Ohio's own doing for not scheduling those games.
100%. Look, I'm not saying that Miami of Ohio deserves to be in with their strength of schedule being what it is. Yes, I would put Miami of Ohio today in, but again, I would put them in as the representative for their conference. I genuinely believe that conferences fail themselves with these conference tournaments for the mid-majors. I'm not going to look at Auburn and say, oh, man, look at the gauntlet you went through when you scheduled that gauntlet. Like, you knew the SEC was going to be tough this year. If you wanted to make an easier road for the NCAA tournament, you simply could have. You don't, in my mind, you don't schedule a gauntlet and then turn around and ask me to factor that gauntlet into a reason why you're not winning enough games. Like, dude, you schedule them. You put them on your plate, and if you put them on your plate and you got eaten over and over and over again, then, it's the whole, like, better to be thought of fool than speak and prove it right, whatever that old Shakespeareanism was. Like, better to be a bubble team that everybody's like, oh, I don't know. Well, we know with Auburn. We know that they lost the majority of these big games that they scheduled because Auburn's not as good as those teams that we just mentioned. Like, they're not as
Auburn's
good as
not
the cream
good.
of the crop. Right. So,
they're not a good basketball team.
We're fighting to put a team in that's already shown us they're not good enough, or a team over here that we think probably isn't good enough, and if they lose is going to be left out. Like, maybe both of them deserve to be left out. This is wild. We've got plenty of time left, more to break down on the NCAA tournament because it is right around the corner. And again, Yahoo Sports going to have some great coverage for you. We'll be covering the men's and women's tournament. You'll see Carolina and I both all over that coverage with some great analysts and guests joining us. Cannot wait for that. In the meantime, also can't wait for the NBA to continue to give us old school games. Last night was I don't even care if you like the game. Last night was perfect. We'll tell you why.
You covered Darnold with the Jets. Where are you kind of just feeling about him?
Another game with 3 games in a row, no turnovers for Sam. The sack avoidance night from Sam was incredible. The back and forth between Sam and Milton Williams was honestly really impressive for Sam on my part because I thought that it wasn't his best game of the season, but it was the game he needed to have, which was clean. He won the Super Bowl. He's going to get a contract extension. It's kind of cool to see his redemption story.
What was it like being at MSG? Like in the back, the locker room? Like, could you feel that it was a little different?
It's a total different experience from being there as a spectator to actually being there backstage and all of that stuff. Total different experience. I was so tuned into my fight. I don't even think I was looking at the referee. I'm just there, just kind of just like looking down. I'm listening to what he's saying. At the same time, I'm just thinking about the fight. I'm like, yeah, all right, y'all done? You ready? Right? Yeah. All right, it's time to go.
The Premier League has gotten so successful. Survival has become such a priority. Maybe that doesn't lead to the most entertaining football match.
The one thing that you want to avoid is having this runaway first place team by Boxing Day, which happens more often than not. This has been, I would argue, a little bit more exciting this season. The entire mid-table is packed.
Yeah.
So
as an Everton fan, I'm like, yeah, we in the mix.
For Clippers fans, I just feel bad, Tom. I mean, I feel bad. It's always something with the Clippers. It's always something. And then, the year begins and the whole aspiration thing, and then the team sucks. And then they start winning and they make a run and they're in the play-in and the playoffs are ahead. And then this all happens. James Harden does it again. He asks for another trade.
Oh, that is just exactly what we saw last night. perfect representation of the game because the Spurs went out there and absolutely spanked the 76ers, but also did it old school style, right? Like plenty of takeaways in this drubbing. 131-91 was the final score in this. We'll get to the presentation in just a second, but an absolute just throttling. Look, the Spurs just lost a couple of nights ago to the Knicks in Madison Square Garden at the end of a long road trip, and everybody says, ooh, maybe the Spurs are... No, the Spurs just... you're going to have that night in the NBA. They came right back out and reminded us, Caroline, that they are clearly a championship contender, and the 76ers clearly are not.
Yeah, just when we wanted to think like, oh, maybe there's a little something there with the Sixers. Maybe the East just got that much more interesting. Maybe the Sixers are the fifth best. No. No. You are what what you show us to be, especially at this point in the season. Maybe earlier on in the season in January, we could say, oh, okay, pretenders, contenders. I don't know. No, in March, you reveal yourself as a pretender or a contender. And the Sixers are squarely a pretender. And the Spurs are 1000% a contender. And dare I say, Fitzy, the scariest thing about this Spurs team isn't the 8-foot-tall literal alien that they have playing for them, like somebody who was so perfectly crafted genetically to play the game of basketball. Dare I say Wemby isn't even the scariest thing about this team. Dare I say the scariest thing about San Antonio is how deep they are. Is how they've had a different leading scorer in each of their last 4 to 5 games. Is the fact on any given night, we could see Stephon Castle putting up 20-plus points, Wemby putting up 20-plus points. We can see Dylan Harper putting up 20-plus points. We can see De'Aaron Fox putting up 20-plus points. Like on any given night, any of those guys can have a massive game. On any given night, if maybe, let's say a Wemby doesn't have his best night against the Knicks, he can come back the next game and drop 20-plus, plus 10 to 15 rebounds on any given night. Like this team is so incredibly deep, and they can beat you in so many different ways. That is what's so terrifying about this Spurs team to me, and the fact that they are clicking at the most perfect and opportune time.
8 players currently averaging double digits for the San Antonio Spurs right now, which again speaks to your depth. It speaks to the fact that they've got a bunch of guys that can come off, and you saw the stat line last night, but especially, we all love to talk about the Philly backcourt as being something special. I would just remind everybody that, was Steph Castle and Dylan Harper last night both went off. Like, this is a backcourt that can absolutely do damage. And at some point, as those young guys continue to grow, I'm just curious how anybody tries to defend any of this when it takes so many resources to try and at least slow down Wemby, which doesn't seem to really exist. That's why, no matter what we've seen so far throughout the course of this season, and the two things we know, OKC has had a hard time getting healthy, and even when they are healthy this year, San Antonio has been their kryptonite. I'm not willing, as we sit here right now at the beginning of March, to rule out the possibility that what we're seeing right now in San Antonio is an NBA champion this year. It feels like this team is going to be a matchup nightmare in 7-game series. But it was a dream matchup last night for the broadcast. They went old school. Like, this was such a beautiful moment. It gave us the NBC pulling out all the stops. They went with the old scorebook, the old graphics, even listening to Bob Costas bring us into the beginning of the game, just writing poetically. It was a masterclass on how to start a broadcast. It was a masterclass on a vibe for a broadcast. I need this, Caroline. I need this not just last night. Like, I need throughout the course of the playoffs. I need one game in every series to be a 90s throwback. I want all of it. I want the old everything. I want the old unis. I want the old short shorts. I want the old everything every step of the way. Give me that vibe and feel. It made a regular season night feel particularly special for the NBA.
It was so good. And it wasn't even the sense of nostalgia. Like, because I always think that's, a fun, warm fuzzy, that you look at certain graphics or you hear certain voices and it brings you back to a certain point, whether it's in your childhood or whenever it might have been. And that kind of, it hits you right in the warm fuzzies. But I don't think it was even the nostalgia, at least for me. I think it was just because it was good. Like, we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We don't need to get all cute with changing graphics and changing the introductions for games, the openings for games. Like, we don't need to get all of these, super detailed lower thirds or score bugs. Just do how you used to do it. We don't need to get cute. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes just yellow impact font with a drop shadow, sometimes that's what does it. Like those score bugs. I mean, I'm a graphics nerd. I always pay attention to that in broadcast. I think that people that just, you work in this business long enough, you pay attention to those little details of things. Most people probably don't, but we do. My fiance last night was like, "That's a good score bug." And I was like, "I know, it's a great score bug. It was beautiful. The NBC logo, the NBA logo, it was clear, it was easy to read." How many times? I'm 28 years old, and sometimes I'm squinting at the TV like, "What does that say?" I can't read that score bug. So I can only imagine, older people are having a hard time with it, but it was easy to read, it was clear, it was colorful, it looked good on the broadcast. It was just so good. Loved everything about it.
It was a reminder, too, of how clean a broadcast can look when you don't have a million distractions. It's funny for me because there's probably a fine line, as I've mentioned before. Like, I remember the 10-minute ticker in the NFL being a kid. You'd have to wait till every 10 minutes to find out what was going on across the league because you couldn't find the games or the scores. I think what we saw last night was that perfect sort of marriage, the nostalgia of it, and then the simplicity of it. I found my TV was less cluttered. I found I was less distracted. And there's just something about listening to some of the legends call these games that is just perfect. It was absolutely, again, I want to go back to Costas. The intro was so well written. Doug Collins was so good. It had this feel. One thing we talk about all the time is, can you make big games feel like big games? And that's difficult to do sometimes in the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NHL, sports that I love, but have marathon seasons. How do you give tremendous meaning? Even though last night, as we opened the show today, was a meaningful game between Detroit and Cleveland. We understand the meaning. But how do you really give that sense to a regular viewer that's tuning in? Well, last night was a reminder that certain broadcast crews historically just do that. They make things feel bigger by having their voice on it. Last night was a great example of that. I don't know the modern iteration of that will do the same thing, Caroline. But to me, from the moment I turned on the game last night, I was locked into it. I couldn't turn it off. I wasn't walking away. I wasn't on my phone. It felt bigger to me. There are certain crews that do that.
Yeah.
This one absolutely accomplished it.
Bob Costas does that. He has the voice that just was made to do this. And a legend of a person, a great person, and a legend of a broadcaster. Like, there are certain voices that you associate with certain things, right? Like, if I hear Mike Tirico, I know I'm watching Sunday Night Football. Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth. When I hear Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler's voice, like, I know that I'm watching a big-time college football game. The same thing with Vern Lundquist. When I heard his name, when I heard his voice, I just knew exactly where I was. I could hear those voices introducing certain places and certain games and certain matchups and setting the scene, setting the stage. Reese Davis, I know that I'm being transported into college game day. It takes a special voice and a special broadcaster to be able to do that and evoke that sort of feeling. That's exactly how I felt hearing Bob Costas's voice. It was a special evening, and bravo to NBC and to the NBA for pulling this thing off.
Yeah, and just go back and watch. It's on social media. Watch the open of this game. I don't know how Bob does it. It was just perfectly written. As he sat there and just I don't know if it was off the cuff or if it was written, either way. But as he brought us into that game, I had every single feel coming into it, and I just sat there and thought, man, he's better than everybody else. He's just more talented. Kudos to NBC.
Just that much
These
better.
these are in a world where we love to fault every broadcast for what it doesn't offer. Praise to NBC and Peacock and everybody behind the scenes last night, because they put together something that felt special. It will feel special this weekend when we get one of the greatest rivalries in all of sports and the best rivalry in college basketball. Raymond Felton going to join us next. We'll get his thoughts on UNC-Duke and what the entire series means.
Who's the dream fight? Like, who's the final boss for you?
Nyla Inoue.
Yeah, that's the one, huh?
Yeah, I feel like he's the guy.
What a freaking fight that would be.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
How far away do you think you are from this, like, maybe being a thing?
I would say maybe a year.
Yeah.
Maybe just a year away. Yeah, it's
the
right
dream
there.
to try to, like, get more belts so that entices him to come after you? Okay.
100%. He's going to get a wake-up call fighting a guy like me.
And Kenneth Walker wins Super Bowl MVP.
The way he's kind of molded his game to work for him has been fun because it's such a hard turn from where he started. Sometimes it feels like a more dramatic version of like how Le'Veon Bell used to run the ball, how Le'Veon would stop and wait and see things open. But Le'Veon, like, he was hugging the ass of his centers and his guards. Kenneth is like, he's like step back so he can see the whole picture open up. And then when it hits, he's off.
The Sixers, to me, are the biggest loser of the trade deadline. You get these middling picks for Jared McCain, one of your most promising young players, to duck the tax. Just a joke. If I'm a Sixers fan, I'm infuriated. The Sixers, losers this trade deadline. It's just so disappointing for Philadelphia, man.
Who in college football could experience that same level of redemption arc? And I was thinking, we've actually kind of seen it a little bit in the past. I would say Jaden Daniels did. Remember when his teammates were like throwing his things out of his locker and talking trash about him when he left Arizona State, and then he goes and wins the Heisman at LSU?
It was a little bit of a turnaround. I wonder what those guys are doing now.
You see right there, Tar Heel floor general, the great Raymond Felton. He's the 2005 NCAA national champion with the Tar Heels that went on to spend more than a decade plus in the NBA. He joins us now with UNC-Duke being just days away. Before we get to that game, let's start with the game last night, though. All right, number 17, North Carolina takes down Clemson 67-63. It was a bit of a nail-biter, but here's what's important. They go 18-0 at home. You were a part of some incredible UNC teams. When you hear undefeated at home, what does it say to you?
Oh, that's amazing, man. You have to protect home. When you come into the Dean Dome, the Smith Center, you want it to be a hostile, very tough place to play. And I'm proud of them young guys down there taking care of business.
It's a special place. I mean, it's a special tradition. It's a special brand, the special everything, but it's a special place to go watch a game and get to witness in person. How often do you get to go back and watch games at your alma mater?
Probably once or twice a year. With me doing a podcast and with me coaching, it's kind of hard for me to get away. But I try to get down there when I can. Me and Theo Pinson went down there and did a live show when we was when the last game, and that was probably one of the best games I've been to in a long time, with that big shot by Seth that he knocked down, and just the atmosphere in that place was just electrifying. It kind of just gave me goosebumps. Kind of made me feel like I was playing again. So it was beautiful. It was just, it was just the example of the rivalry. Just that feeling. Everybody's there. The junk talking, just everything, man. Just that whole atmosphere. College game day was there, so it was just that whole atmosphere, that whole feeling was just so real. I just felt like I was back at Carolina again, being a little kid.
All right, so what about the other side of it? Because this weekend we get this game at Cameron. What was Cameron like for you when you played there?
Oh, it was hostile. It was hostile. It was hostile. The fans over there are one of a kind. I will say. But it's fun though. It's all love. They're gonna talk junk. They're gonna have all kind of posters, all kind of things up about you up there in the stands. And it's just a part of the rivalry, man. I loved it. I thrived off of it. It actually made me play better. So, it's the biggest rivalry in the game, man. There's no way I can explain it in words. It's just a feeling, and you could just feel it if you're in the gym at that time during those games. You could just feel it. It's like the floor is shaking. It's like the whole arena is moving. I don't know. I can't explain it in words.
I mean, they don't call it Cameron Crazies for nothing. That place is rocking and it is loud. It's a really difficult place to play, as you know firsthand. When North Carolina got Duke at home, they were able to defend home court and get a huge win. Now turning around, going on the road at Cameron, what would it mean, you living the rivalry, wearing the uniform? What do you think it would mean to this group to be able to get a win on the road at the number one team in the country?
I think it'd be big going into the ACC tournament. I think it'd be big going into the tournament. And then it'll definitely be big and just give even more confidence to the other guys without Caleb being on the court. So if they could go in there and get a win, which I'm banking on it that they will. And they've been playing good basketball. I think guys has been stepping up since Caleb has been out, and they rallied together and they're still getting wins. So that tells you a lot about this team. And I think, not just saying it because I'm a Tar Heel, I think this team can be really dangerous going into the tournament.
So talk to me a little bit about controlling adrenaline, because I always think about, this is at Cameron. It's the number one team in the country. What do you look for early in a game like this to see how the teams are handling the moment?
I think the biggest part of it is just get all the jitters out, get the nervousness, just get that first 3 or 4 minutes out the way, because it's going to be some turnovers. There's going to be some mistakes. It's going to be some things that's going to happen just because it's just that feeling you're going to have at first. You're going to be hyped up. You're going to make mistakes. So once they get past that 3 or 4 minutes, I think they settle down and then they can get out of that situation. I think we'll be fine. I think it'll be a good game like always. Like I said, it doesn't matter if Carolina's number one in the country or Duke is number one in the country. It's still going to be a good game no matter what, just because of the rivalry.
You mentioned how tough this game might be without Caleb Wilson. He's been out for about the last month with a fractured hand. He's still, though, a projected top 5 pick in this upcoming NBA draft. What makes him so special?
I think it's just his mentality. Obviously he's very talented, he's very skilled, and he has a big upside. As far as looking at him as an NBA guy, he has a big upside. I think probably the biggest upside in this draft. But his mentality, just talking to him and just seeing him play, his mentality to me reminds me of Kevin Garnett. Just his desire to win, his dog mentality. He works hard. He wants to get better. He wants to learn. And I think things like that can take you a long way. So with him being a guy that's, already has some stardom, he still works. He still wants to get better. He still wants it. He's still hungry. And that means a lot. So to me, I think he can possibly still go into that top 1 pick. I mean, he could be number 1. Honestly, depends on how the lottery ball goes and who gets that first pick. To be honest with you, I love AJ. I love Darren Peterson. I like Boozer as well. I think all 3 of those guys are really good. But to me, Caleb is a guy that has the biggest upside out of all of them, to me.
So let's look at the other sideline, because we've talked on this show a little bit. You never want to be the guy that replaces the guy, but that's exactly what Shire has done at Duke. When you see that, what stands out to you in his ability to sort of just seamlessly transition from the era of Coach K?
I mean, he was up under Coach K for a few years before, he stepped into that position. So, he definitely learned from one of the best coaches in the game. So, I wasn't surprised at all. He's a guy that played the game. He's a guy that's been around, this program for a very, very long time. Like I said, he was able to learn and coach up under Coach K for some years. So, it don't surprise me that he stepped in and being able to do the things that he's doing and get the recruits that he's been able to get. It doesn't surprise me at all. He's a good coach.
Yeah, no doubt he's a good coach. I think it's impressive being able to continue a level of greatness after you're taking over for an absolute Hall of Fame coach, which is also what Hubert Davis did at North Carolina, taking over for Roy Williams. You were there at the start of the Roy Williams era, an absolute legend in North Carolina and in the game of college basketball. What's one of your favorite Roy Williams stories?
Well, I could go on all day talking about Coach, man. He's one of those guys that he pushed me from day one when he came onto campus, when he left Kansas. He pushed me to be who I am. I was always a player that worked. I was always a player that played hard, and I hold everybody accountable on our team because I was going to do the exact same thing that was needed to be done. So Coach was a fiery guy. I told him, you was way harder on us than you was before. I talked to Theo Pinson about it all the time. I said, y'all got the soft Coach Williams. And he was like, really? I said, yeah. I said, because I remember the story when we lost in the ACC tournament to Georgia Tech, and we came back in the first 3 days, 2 or 3 days, I can't remember exactly, 2 3 days of practice, he took all the rims off the backboard. And we practiced just strictly no rim, just straight practice. And we like, what like, how we supposed to do this? So it was just all about defense. He told us that you're going to do one thing, you're going to play some defense. And that same face that he's making right there is the same face he was making at us. That's one of his classic screaming voices, screaming faces. So that was the part of the story that stands out to me about Coach, is that he took all the rims off the basket and told us it worked, because we went on and made a great run, won 6 games in a row, and won a national championship. So, hey, it worked.
Do you believe in the modern climate where we've got NIL and transfer portal that a coach can coach his team that hard without having to worry about guys just deciding they don't want to play?
I think it does make it difficult. It does, and that's kind of why you see a lot of coaches like Coach Williams, Coach K, and them kind of just say, you know what, I think it's time for me to retire. And I don't think that's a necessary reason why they retire, but I'm pretty sure that has a little something to do with it, where you can't hold kids accountable now. You can't, yell or scream at them without them saying, I'm leaving, I'm going to the next team and go try to get more money or whatever the situation is. There's no accountability held now with these NIL deals. And I'm happy that the kids are getting money by all means. I think just something that should have been done where, college athletes are getting paid, but I think it should be some stipulations on it. I think it should be definitely some stipulations on the transfer portal, but it is what it is. We in this era now, and I think some coaches still don't care. I think some coaches still coach the way they're going to coach, and I think those are the organizations and schools that are still going to be very successful, because it doesn't matter. We're going to keep, what we do here, and no matter if you want to transfer or go somewhere else, we're going to stay true to our standards, and that's just what it is. Then you have some that tries to cater to these young guys, and then that don't necessarily work out all the time.
Fitz mentioning NIL and transfer portal. I saw you do that kind of reaction. Why that reaction to some of these changes in college sports?
Man, listen, man, these kids are making millions of dollars now. I would love to have seen what I could have got for an NIL deal when I came out. But like I said, I'm happy for them. That's not me not trying to hate on the situation. I just feel like I just don't want to lose the love of the game. I don't want to lose college basketball, which is I love to watch college basketball, because I feel like these young guys are working to get to the next level, so they're playing hard. And when you got guys who are already making a lot of money, they're not necessarily taking it that serious no more. And I kind of see that a little bit in the game, that guys are not playing as hard until March Madness, until maybe the tournament, when you actually playing to win something. So I kind of missed that part of it. But other than them getting paid, like I said, I'm happy that they're starting to pay guys. But the transfer portal, I think they should keep that. I think they should change that and go back to the old days where if you transfer, you got to sit out a year. You lose a year, rather than you transfer and you get to play right away. Because sometimes they don't hold these guys accountable. That's just my opinion on that.
I see the jersey behind you, but we've also shown some pictures of cutting down the nets. Did you keep your piece of the net? Is the piece of the net somewhere, Raymond?
It's definitely somewhere, but I tell you where it's at. It's at my mom's. I was at my mom and dad's house. I kind of gave them kind of everything that kind of stuff for the ring. I gave them everything that kind of came with that championship. My jersey, just the net, everything. I think the hat that we wore, the shirt, everything we had that particular night. I gave it over to my parents.
Well, you've got this love with North Carolina in your soul. On Saturday, who are you group texting? Like who's on the phone with you that's either talking trash or you're just you're celebrating with?
Oh, I'm taking all bets. That's what I tell all the Duke guys. I'm taking all bets, no matter what, because I'm up right now. I'm up right now. A lot of people didn't think we was going to win that game at Carolina, So I was a very happy guy after that game. I was making a lot of phone calls to a lot of people who was calling my phone, just eager to bet me for that game. Which I haven't really been getting a lot of phone calls this time because they're a little skeptical because of what happened last time. But I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get a few calls, a few bets in, and we'll see what happens. I'm still riding with my guys no matter what.
Talk your trash. Put your money where your mouth is, especially with the way that last game ended on the last second three. I mean, it was all of the theatrics, all of the drama that you would want from this kind of rivalry. So you mentioned your time, winning a national championship at North Carolina. Can this team follow in your footsteps and win a national championship this year?
I think with the confidence that these guys are getting, the confidence with our young guards are getting, Seth, he's being that leader and is stepping up and playing great. We get Caleb back, and we got our big fella in the middle. I think if everybody come together and play at the right time, and we defend at a high level, I think we could score over anybody. I just think that if we play defense the way I know we're capable of, I see this team having a chance just like anybody else, 100%.
All you got to do is just take the rims off the backboards, and then we'll get everybody play defense. Raymond, we appreciate your time.
It works.
We appreciate you hanging out with us, man. Thanks for the years of memories you've given us getting to watch you play, but thanks for hanging out with us this morning. Good luck this weekend. Hope you get to talk your talk and go buy a yacht with all the winnings. Let's go, buddy.
Thank you, man. I appreciate y'all having me on. Have a good day.
Thank you,
stuff
Raymond.
From a legend. Going to be a legendary game. All right, coming up next, the Cardinals have released Kyler is the better solution at the quarterback position, sitting right in front of our eyes. I'll tell you about it next.
Peterson looked like the clear-cut number one pick in the first half of that game. He looked like the clear-cut number one pick. The fluidity on the floor, the ease in which he moved off ball defensively, creating havoc. He looked majestic.
Sometimes it just comes down to as simple as this dude moves the way basketball players are born to move. Was Kevin Durant the last college scorer that made it look as effortless?
Did you go to the casino after the fight?
Hell yeah.
How'd you do?
We're up.
Up?
We're up.
Well done.
We're up.
Were you just walking around there after the fight and people recognizing you? Weren't you the guy that was just on the UFC?
Yeah, that's where I get recognized the most.
Really?
What's that say? The gambling legends, everyone recognizes me there. Anywhere else I go, no one knows me. But if I go there, everyone points me out.
The 72 Dolphins is infamously the no-name defense. This one's the too many name defense.
Too many names,
Too many names.
Defenses were ahead of offenses this season for a lot of it. The best teams in the NFL had the best defenses. We're sitting here talking about this defense and how good it was and how hard it is to isolate one player. And that's the sport of football. It's a team sport. It's hard to isolate individual players, and Seattle really exemplified that all year.
We're ranking the actual threats from the absolute frauds.
Your contenders, who do you got?
My contenders. So I have Sporting, and I say that because they have had a strong top 8 finish over some other heavyweight teams. They're actually very, very hard to break down as a squad, and they're very, very strong in transition.
And they got a guy named Luis Suarez, which is fun.
Guard your ears.
The belief among those around the league is that Malik Willis will sign with the Arizona Cardinals per Tony Pauline. Should be noted that the Cardinals have told Kyler Murray, per his request, according to Baltimore reports, he will be released on Wednesday of next week. That's the first day that they can actually get him out cleared into the street. So Kyler Murray will no longer be an Arizona Cardinal. He went to social media to express regret for not being able to accomplish what they had hoped that they could accomplish, and really owned a lot of the failure in that process. But now I'm just looking around saying, is Malik really this massive upgrade from Kyler Murray? Because not everybody seems to love this concept. Is Malik to the Cardinals a good idea to you, Caroline?
That's a loaded question. It is, it makes too much sense. I will just say that. It makes far too much sense because you look at Michael Floor, and in Arizona. His brother was Malik Willis's last head coach. So that makes sense. You have the connection there with the LaFleur brothers, Matt to Mike LaFleur. And then if you also look at Monty Austinforth, the general manager in Arizona, he was the director of player personnel in Tennessee when the Titans drafted Malik Willis out of Liberty. So many connections there. Monty Austinforth has familiarity with Malik Willis and his abilities, having built that relationship in Tennessee. Mike LaFleur has that relationship, or at least has that tie with Matt LaFleur. I heard a lot of connections with Jeff Hafley in Miami. Obviously, the Green Bay connection there. It makes more sense to me, though, in Arizona, just financially. Obviously, the Cardinals moving on from Kyler, it's a massive question mark of what the Dolphins can even do, what kind of flexibility they have with Tua's contract. So that Arizona makes far more sense to me than Miami does for Malik Willis. But to your question, is it a good idea? Well, I do believe that sometimes in life, in sports, and football, the devil that you don't know is better than the devil that you do. Cardinals fans and the Cardinals organization understood that they had a ceiling with Kyler Murray, and the ceiling clearly was not nearly high enough than they wanted it to be. That Kyler had the whole Call of Duty gate, the Call of Duty clause in his contract. There are size limitations with Kyler. I mean, let's remember, the Cardinals basically benched Kyler Murray this past year. They soft benched him and kind of couched it with the injury. Oh, it's the injury. And then Jacoby Brissett came in and actually played a pretty solid brand of football for them this past season. So, the Cardinals understood, the Cardinals organization, the Cardinals fans knew that they weren't going, there was an end here, right? It was a very clear and obvious separation and impending divorce that was coming. Is Malik Willis better than Kyler Murray? I don't think so. But, he doesn't have the height disadvantages that Kyler has. Kyler's listed at, 5'10", which, yeah, right. If he's 5'10", I'm 5'10". Malik Willis listed at 6'1". Like, the height issue isn't there. The Call of Duty, question marks, the question of his dedication to the game isn't there. There's at least enough there that we saw from Malik Willis to give Cardinals fans or the Cardinals organization optimism that Malik can win you enough games to at least be relevant. But I don't think that Malik Willis is going to be the guy that gets you to the promised land. I think the idea in Arizona is you bring in Malik Willis, sign him to a $25-30 million deal, which in today's quarterback market is a bargain. Let's say Malik Willis, wins you 10 games. Great. Then you're probably a wild card team. Wonderful. You get what you want. If Malik Willis stinks, well, then you're probably bad enough to draft your quarterback of the future next year, and you're not going to be tied long-term to Malik Willis, or at least ideally, you're not going to be putting yourself into cap misery for the next 5 to 10 years. With Malik Willis, you probably sign him to a 3-year deal. That's really a 2-year deal that you can get out on year 3. And if he's bad enough that you can draft your quarterback of the future, well, then you don't have to rush your quarterback of the future, that Malik can be your guy in the second year of his contract. You can ease your young quarterback in, move on from him in year 3. Your young quarterback is your starting quarterback that year. I see the plan there.
I don't see any plan with Malik Willis. This entire Malik Willis conversation to me is off. And this just comes down to the thing I talk about all the time, which is proof of concept. Anthony Richardson in his career is as an NFL quarterback. He's never been really available. He's attempted 350 passes. In fact, let's go to this number. Last year, Kyler Murray only played in 5 NFL games. He was 110 of 161 in 5 NFL games. Why is that significant? Because in Malik Willis's entire career, he's 105 out of 155. Dude's only attempted 155 passing attempts in 4 seasons. And we're suddenly seeing that something's fixed. In fact, last year, for all the conversation we're having about look at the great Malik Willis put on tape, he was 30 of 35 passing for the season. In 4 games, he attempted 35 passes. So, to me, anybody that's sitting here saying, oh, Malik Willis is fixed or Malik Willis was underutilized. 2 years ago in Green Bay, he was 40 of 54 for the season. Last year, he was 30 of 35 for the season. We have no proof of concept at all that Malik Willis can actually be a sustainable starting quarterback. In his 2 years where he's had the chance to start for Green Bay away from the Tennessee Titans, he essentially has 2 games worth of thrown passes for a team that throws the football a lot. we're going to turn around and give $25, $30 million to somebody, have a bidding war for somebody that's literally thrown 150 career passes? Like, that makes no sense to me. I understand that the problem here is that Kyler Murray has shown us enough bad on tape that we see the bad and we say, look, Kyler Murray must suck. We haven't even seen enough of Malik Willis in any game to know if he's good or bad. Like, to me, you are just absolutely throwing cash at total chaos if you're throwing cash at Malik Willis, because I don't think 4 years, 155 passes is any proof of concept that the guy can or can't play. So you're just banking that your coaches are going to be able to get sustainable brilliance out of somebody that the last 2 seasons combined hasn't even attempted 100 passes.
Malik Willis isn't getting paid because he's good. Like, Malik Willis isn't getting paid because everyone thinks that all of a sudden, because he's completed 30 or 35 passes the past season in Green Bay, is because he's fixed. Malik Willis is getting paid because he's available. Like, welcome to the quarterback market. We do gymnastics, mental gymnastics over the quarterback position. We lose our minds over quarterbacks. When I say we, I really mean the GMs and front offices across the National Football League. Like, we do all of this sort of bending over backwards to try and fit a square peg into a round hole at the quarterback position. Like, Malik Willis, to your point, has proven nothing. Nothing. I mean, I was in Tennessee. I was covering the Titans on a daily basis when Malik Willis was drafted. You say we haven't seen enough film to say that Malik Willis is good or bad. No, I saw enough film in Tennessee, limited reps of Malik Willis in preseason and in the regular season, and watching him in practice to know he ain't it. Like, I saw all I needed to see. Then we saw at least a little bit of a resurrection in Green Bay. We at least saw something that, like, hey, I can fix him. I can fix him. I can work with that. And with the mental gymnastics that we do at this position, that's enough for people to say, hey, I'll pay him $25, $30 million, not because he's worth $30 million, not because he's proven himself to be a $30 million quarterback, but because what the hell else are we supposed to do? He's available. He's a free agent. We can pick him up off the streets. And if he's good enough to make this season exciting, cool. $30 million pays for itself. And if he's not, then we move on from him and try again and go back to the well at the quarterback position. Nobody is saying that Malik Willis is fixed. But what we are saying is, I can fix him. I can work with this. I can do it. And you get hired and fired with your ability to actually deliver on that or not.
I mean, if you go back and you look at what are loudly regarded as some of the worst contracts in NFL history, one, you got to go all the way back to 1994. History lesson here, kids. There was a quarterback named Scott Mitchell in 1994 that was given a big deal at the time. The Scott Mitchell, exactly. $5 million signing bonus, which at the time was the second largest they'd ever seen in the NFL, to come over from the Miami Dolphins and be the starting quarterback of the Lions. And they did that based on one season where Scott Mitchell came in and suddenly played parts of 13 games. And all of a sudden the Lions went all in and said, no, that's a quarterback for the future. That did not turn out, kids, to be the quarterback of the future. It turned out to be a laughable contract for somebody that had a few good games. We go all the way back to the early 90s before Caroline was even alive. We go all the way that far of teams turning around and looking at quarterbacks and saying, oh, wow, we haven't seen very much, but we can fix them. And then we're stunned when the quarterback that we haven't seen very much of turns out to suck, not be worth the money. And then it's like, well, that guy's a bust. Like, again, for all of the conversation we're having about the lack of availability of Anthony Richardson, I should stress to you that Anthony Richardson has thrown almost 3 times as many passes as a pro as Malik Willis. So that man right there, Scott Mitchell, good pull by our team behind the scenes.
Great pull.
Who knew that even existed out there? Scott Mitchell, all the way back in the 90s, got paid for just coming in and playing a couple of games. That is exactly what we're going to do with Malik Willis. Like, maybe, look, I want Malik to be successful. I want Malik to go out and be transcendent because I root for players to go out and have Disney-like stories, and it's fun for us to cover it. I would love to see somebody go out, just back up the Brinks truck, and Malik Willis turns out to be the second coming of whatever quarterback you want. He's an epic franchise guy. I'm just saying that if you are punting on Kyler Murray and bringing in Malik Willis, at least acknowledge to the world what you're doing. You are essentially throwing out what you know you don't want anymore. That's fine. That's your decision to make. We'll have plenty of time to figure out where Kyler's going to go and what he looks like for other teams. But if you're replacing him with Malik Willis, you are replacing him with it is the equivalent of me going to Carolina and saying, hey, you don't get paid this month, but here's a scratch-off lottery ticket. Could be nothing. could be $1 million. You're welcome in advance. And then let's see how it works out. Like, Caroline's not going to love having to pay her mortgage based on that scratch-off lottery ticket. I don't feel comfortable based on the scratch-off lottery ticket, the total guesswork, the total luck that goes into Malik Willis. I don't feel comfortable with him. Not just for the Cardinals. I don't feel comfortable with anybody investing real money and long-term growth into Malik Willis when we have no idea if he can actually play.
Here's where your comparison is flawed, because you said you can have your paycheck or a scratch-off ticket. Kyler Murray's not my paycheck. Kyler Murray's a poop sandwich. So if you said, Caroline, would you like a poop sandwich or a lottery ticket? I'm probably taking the lottery ticket, understanding that I might get nothing, but I could get $1 million. But nothing is better than a poop sandwich. When you know what you're going to get from a guy and it's not good enough, what's the point of going back to him? Like, everything the Cardinals have shown us and everything the Cardinals have done have said he's not good enough before moving on from him, obviously. So if you know he's not good enough, why continue to go back to him?
You're absolutely right. I have no problem parting ways with Kyler Murray. And again, later in the week, we'll discuss who should pick up Kyler Murray, because certainly people think he's a hot commodity. This isn't about Kyler Murray. This is about looking at anybody and saying Malik Willis is the answer. Like, I think at this point, it's grasping.
Does anyone think he's the answer? I don't think anyone thinks he's the answer.
If you give him a 2-year deal at $30 million a year, like if you give him 2 years at $15 million, like backup money, okay, I have no problem with that. If you give him legitimate starting money, like if we're paying Malik Willis anywhere near what we're paying Daniel Jones, they have very different proof of concept. You may or may not like Daniel Jones, but at least he's got time on task. We have no idea with Malik. Plenty of time to break it down, though, this week. We'll figure out where he could go and what's going to happen with Kyler. But coming up next, one of the most popular teams in the NFL is trying to figure out what to do in the draft. What would make the fans in Pittsburgh go wild when they actually announce their pick in Pittsburgh? We'll tell you.
You covered Darnold with the Jets. Where are you kind of just feeling about him?
Another game with 3 games in a row, no turnovers for Sam. The sack avoidance snipe from Sam was incredible. The back and forth between Sam and Milton Williams was honestly really impressive for Sam on my part, because I thought that it wasn't his best game of the season, but it was the game he needed to have, which was clean. He won the Super Bowl. He's going to get a contract extension. It's kind of cool to see his redemption story.
What was it like being at MSG? Like in the back, the locker room, like could you feel that it was a little different?
It's a total different experience from being there as a spectator to actually being there backstage and all of that stuff. Total different experience. I was so tuned into my fight. I don't even think I was looking at the referee. I'm just there, just kind of just like looking down. I'm listening to what he's saying. At the same time, I'm just thinking about the fight. I'm like, yeah, all right, y'all done? You ready? Right? Yeah. All right, it's time to go.
The Premier League has gotten so successful. Survival has become such a priority. Maybe that doesn't lead to the most like entertaining football match.
The one thing that you want to avoid is having this like runaway first place team by Boxing Day, which happens more often than not. This has been, I would argue, a little bit more exciting this season. The entire mid-table is packed.
Yeah.
So
as an Everton fan, I'm like, yeah, we in the mix.
For Clippers fans, I just feel bad, Tom. I mean, I feel bad. It's always something with the Clippers. It's always something. And then, the year begins and the whole aspiration thing, and then the team sucks. And then they start winning and they make a run and they're in the play-in and the playoffs are ahead. And then this all happens. James Harden does it again. He asks for another trade.
Is there a team that you would like to go to?
Nah, not really. That's a great question. I mean, not really. Like I said, I'm blessed and honored to go anywhere. My parents would probably say they want me to go to the Steelers because that was their favorite team. It still is their favorite team. But yeah, me personally, like I'll be honored and blessed to go anywhere.
That was Caroline Fenton sitting down with Jeremiah Love at the Super Bowl talking about where he'd love to go or, where his family would love to go. You see this tweet here, born to be a Steeler. Have you met with America's team? Who's that? My dad's a Steelers fan. He doesn't like the Cowboys. Like buying all in, and it's got us thinking, Caroline, because the draft, for anyone that doesn't know, is in Pittsburgh this year. So the Steelers, while they're picking 21st in the draft, they're going to have this opportunity with the 21st pick. The Pittsburgh Steelers select. That crowd is going to go absolutely nuts. Now, I think we both know it's unlikely that Jeremiah Love falls all the way to 21. I'm on record saying I think he's gone in the top 5. But let's say he's there. All right, let's say that I'm wrong and the entire market is crumbling on the running backs, and all of a sudden you're sitting there, but at the same time you're sitting there, Ty Simpson also available. Do you go with an episode of The Simpsons, or do you make the crowd fall in love? Which selection do you think would have the fans moving their thank you very much. Which selection do you think would have the fans losing their minds more?
Oh, they're falling in love. Are you kidding? If Jeremiah Love is there at 21, you take him. You don't walk the pick in. You run. You sprint. You trip over your feet bringing that pick in. Look, Ty Simpson is great and all, and I do think that Ty Simpson is going to make a lot of people a lot of money someday in the National Football League, but there still is a massive question. We just had the conversation about Malik Willis and how few passes he's attempted in the NFL, yet he's going to get paid anyways. Let's not forget, Ty Simpson has attempted about 500 passes in college football. That's half as many as Fernando Mendoza. So Ty Simpson still is a big-time question mark that feels like more of a sure thing just because there is so little supply and so much demand at the quarterback position. Jeremiah Love isn't a question mark. Jeremiah Love is a sure thing. You are getting an instant plug-and-play playmaker, a versatile playmaker. He can block. Obviously, he's a bruising runner. He's a strategic runner. I will always tell anybody that wants to just get a good example of what Jeremiah Love is and who he is as a player, go back and watch the Notre Dame Navy game, because there was this ninja spin move that Jeremiah Love did that it looked like he was tackled and he rolled over the defender's, like literally did a roll over his back, popped right up, ran it into the end zone for a touchdown. Like he's smart. Football IQ. He's athletic. He's physical. He can catch passes. He even told me in that same interview when I talked to him at the Super Bowl, he's like, look, if a team wants me to play receiver, I'll play receiver too. He's like, I can be a Jahmyr Gibbs, or I can be like an Amon-Ra St. Brown. Maybe a subliminal message to Detroit Lions fans out there. But he said, I can do anything. I will do anything that a team wants me to do. The Steelers just need weapons. Sure, they have a question mark at the quarterback position, and that's the most important and pressing question answer of any question that you have in the National Football League is who is going to be your starting quarterback. But what the Steelers also need is offensive weapons. Jeremiah Love is slated to go as early as 4. Like, there are some conversation about teams like the Chiefs trading up to 4 to take Jeremiah Love, a running back. Like, that's the kind of value that he has. That's how good so many GMs across the league view Jeremiah Love. So if he falls all the way into your lap at 21, you have to take him.
Look, I just want to commend your rollover. I kind of wanted you to scream parkour while you did it, but either way, like rolling over somebody was well done by you. That was perfect. Look, there's no world where I believe that, frankly, Jeremiah Love is available at 21. And if he were available at 21, for me personally as a GM, there's no world where I would not take Jeremiah Love before I take Ty Simpson. But if the question is what will fans go more nuts for, the answer to that's always the quarterback. Like, Ty Simpson is going to rise. And I've fought this over the course of the last month or so because I want to believe in a measured society. And I think we've gotten more measured at the quarterback position than we like to give ourselves credit for. Every year we get these rumors, these rumblings about a month before the draft where we start hearing, oh, no, that guy's definitely going in the first round. And then all of a sudden, calmer heads prevail. I mean, the joke is I'm old enough to remember when some people were reporting that Will Levis was going to be a top 3 pick in the NFL draft. We all knew that wasn't true, but that's what happens, right? So what have we seen in the last week since the combine? We've seen the meteoric rise of Ty Simpson, right? Because in part, he threw incredibly well. People really like him. Now we've got a lot of people breaking down his tape, finding the positives they like from him. I think there are a million question marks about Ty Simpson. I am very thankful that my favorite team isn't picking in the middle of the first round because I think somebody's going to roll the dice way too early on a quarterback that has real question marks. I would be stunned, honestly, if as we sit here today, I'd be stunned picking at 21 if Ty Simpson is available to the Steelers too, because everybody knows they need a quarterback. So now all of a sudden, people are going to be looking to hop in front of him. Hell, is a team like the Jets, who currently sit here with the 16th pick in the first round, are they going to take a flyer on Ty Simpson? Are the Rams going to take a developmental flyer on a future quarterback? Is Miami that's going to be on the quarterback market? This is what we're going to be doing on our draft shows. Once we hit about 10 on the first round of the draft, every speculation and for every trade is going to be, well, is this a trade up to try and get Ty Simpson? So I'm fearful for the Steelers fan base that they're going to be stuck with the answer of neither. But realistically, if I was making the choice between the two, I believe Jeremiah Love is a more surefire, oh my God, superstar player. I also believe that a quarterback fires up a team more. For then anybody that hasn't heard, I want you to hear what Ty Simpson said specifically about his meeting with the Steelers and with Mike McCarthy. Check a little of this out.
Ty, have you met with the Steelers yet? And if so, how did that meeting go?
Yeah, it was great. Met with them. Coach McCarthy's the guy, man. It was funny, we'd go in there, ask a couple questions, and we were just, talking ball, going back and forth, talking about pass concepts, talking about protection, talking about situations. And it was cool to see all the quarterbacks he's worked with Dak, and Aaron Rodgers, and then, situations that's come up in his career that, hey, asked me about, and what I thought about it. And it was really cool because we were just, going back and forth. And, by the time that we were finished, it was felt like 5 minutes just because of how much fun we had. So, I love Coach McCarthy, love the Steelers, and love those guys, and I'm super excited to get to know them.
Every right answer from the quarterback there, but it does raise
All
the
right,
question.
Ty.
If you're talking about, he's got it all. I love Mike McCarthy. I love everybody.
All right, we get it.
Ty loves everybody. If you're the Steelers and you do draft Ty Simpson, if you're lucky enough to get him in the first round, let's say that's what they want to do. Do you bring back Aaron Rodgers to sort of bridge that gap, or do you go all in and immediately hand Ty the ball and say, you, sir, are the future?
Heck no. None of the above. C, none of the above. I don't think it makes sense in a world for the Steelers to bring back Aaron Rodgers in any situation, in any circumstance, with Ty Simpson, without Ty Simpson, with Cade Klubnik, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussbaum. No. Just cut the tie, all right? Just move on from Aaron Rodgers. Because like Kyler Murray in Arizona, everybody, they moved on from Kyler Murray because they knew exactly what they were going to get from Kyler Murray, and it wasn't good enough. With Aaron Rodgers, you know exactly what you are going to get. And it is the exact same thing that the Pittsburgh Steelers have gotten for the last decade. You go 9-8, you squeak into the playoffs, you lose in the first round of the postseason, and then you move on and hope for better the next year, but you don't. You get the exact same thing. It has been Groundhog Day in Pittsburgh for a decade. What? Why? Do you want to stay in the mucky middle? Being in the mucky middle for as long as the Pittsburgh Steelers has, I think, is the worst position to be in sports, because you are just good enough to be outside of striking distance to find your quarterback of the future, but you're not good enough to be relevant or exciting. So you're just stuck in football purgatory. You don't want to sign up for that. We talked to Joey Molinaro, diehard Pittsburgh Steelers fan at the Super Bowl, and he said, I would rather be terrible than be 9-8 and do the exact same thing that we do every single year. Now, I think that's, maybe a cautionary tale. It's easy to say that when you've, won enough games to at least not be miserable for a long time. I think, all of us that are fans of bad teams would say, whoa, slow your roll there. But the Steelers need to go the Steelers have proven they're ready to go in a different direction. They just moved on from Mike Tomlin, a future Hall of Fame coach, because they were sick and tired of going in the same direction. So move on from Aaron Rodgers. If you want to run it back with Will Howard and roll the dice with Will Howard, then so be it. And if you're terrible with Will Howard, then you take a quarterback in next year's draft. And if you're pretty good with Will Howard, well, then maybe you have some there with Will Howard. You just know what you're going to get with Aaron Rodgers. So I don't see a world that makes sense to bring Aaron Rodgers back to Pittsburgh, although all the writing on the wall says Aaron Rodgers will probably be back in Pittsburgh, and we're just going to be right back on the same carousel over again in Pittsburgh.
I also think if you drafted Ty Simpson, the question you have to ask yourself is what quarterback is going to best equip Ty Simpson to be the absolute best pro that he can be? Based solely on what we know about everything from attendance to mini camps and the way the training camp has gone in prior years and just the way certain players carry themselves and handle themselves, what part of Aaron Rodgers screams mentor for somebody to learn the position. I just don't think that's the right approach. I think you need a very particular set of skills for that type of bridge quarterback. So, yeah, I do believe that Aaron Rodgers would probably come in and help you win a few more games. And I don't love, if you draft Ty Simpson, I don't love going in with Will Howard and Ty Simpson as my quarterback room. I would love to bring in a vet. But the vet that I bring in is going to be somebody that isn't just this is what I do because I'm physically capable of doing it. It's this is how I do everything that comes into being a quarterback in the NFL. Most quarterbacks aren't going into the darkness for 3 days to figure their lives out, right? Like, I think Aaron's path, and it's okay to be this, Aaron's path is very different than many's path. So if I want a quarterback to come in and be a mentor of some sort, do I need that quarterback to be a traditional quarterback that's mentoring a traditional approach, or do I want somebody that's a little weird and a little left to center? The answer to that is I want somebody right down the middle that can come in, be a vet, and teach that player how to play. I don't think Aaron Rodgers does that. It's better for Aaron and better for the Steelers and better for a rookie quarterback if they draft one not to have Aaron Rodgers in the building this year. All right, coming up, one of the biggest stars in the world, Shohei, out here being Shohei. And the question is, that hero's welcome that he's getting in Japan, can anybody else get that anywhere else? The answer might surprise you. We'll talk about it next.
Who's the dream fight? Like, who's the final boss for you?
Naoya Inoue.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I feel like he's the guy.
What a freaking fight that would be.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
How far away do you think you are from this, like, maybe being a thing?
I would say maybe a year.
Yeah.
Maybe just a year away. Yeah, it's
the
right
dream
there.
to try to, like, get more belts so that entices him to come after you? Okay.
100%. He's going to get a wake-up call fighting a guy like me.
And Kenneth Walker wins Super Bowl MVP.
The way he's kind of molded his game to work for him has been fun because it's such a hard turn from where he started. Sometimes it feels like even a more dramatic version of like how Le'Veon Bell used to run the ball, how Le'Veon would stop and wait and see things open. But Le'Veon, like, he was hugging the ass of his centers and his guards. Kenneth is he's like step back so he can see the whole picture open up. And then when it hits, he's off.
The Sixers, to me, are the biggest loser of the trade deadline. You get these middling picks for Jared McCain, one of your most promising young players, to duck the tax. Just a joke. If I'm a Sixers fan, I'm infuriated. The Sixers, losers this trade deadline. It's just so disappointing for Philadelphia, man.
Who in college football could experience that same level of redemption arc? And I was thinking, we've actually kind of seen it a little bit in the past. I would say Jaden Daniels did. Remember when his teammates were like throwing his things out of his locker and talking trash about him when he left Arizona State, and then he goes and wins the Heisman at LSU?
It was a little bit of a turnaround. I wonder what those guys are doing now.
Shohei packed an entire stadium in Japan to watch him take batting practice. Talking about practice? His BP, without a doubt, the most impressive BP you'll ever see in person. That, according to Ben Verlander, Caroline Fenton. I watch this and I am reminded of certain global phenomena. There are just some people that mean more as brands. I go back to entertainment. If you are lucky enough to be my age, you remember when Michael Jackson touring the world was something that shut the world down. In fact, even whether or not you love or hate Taylor Swift, it's undeniable that globally she shut the world down a couple of summers ago, right? When she traveled all over the place. It is so rare to see this, and seeing Shohei and his ability to pack a stadium for practice, I think is just a reminder of the level of fanfare that hits him at such a rare and global level.
I've seen photos and videos of people, whether they live in Japan or they're taking trips and vacations over to Japan, they'll just take a video of walking through a department store, and it's, oh, Shohei's on this ad, oh, Shohei's on that ad, oh, there's Shohei, there's a Shohei jersey, there's a Shohei everywhere. Shohei everywhere. He really is. I mean, it's a global phenomenon. I went to a Dodgers game last summer, and every time Shohei went up to bat, it was like clockwork. Everyone picked up their phones, was taking a video of Shohei Ohtani because he was must-see TV and the kind of thing that if I'm going to witness this in person, I'm going to try and keep it, memorialize it forever. I think when you just want to talk in the baseball sense, I mean, he's one of the greatest players, if not the greatest players that we will ever see in our lifetime. When we say once in a generation type of player, that moniker is reserved for somebody like Shohei Ohtani doing things that hasn't been done since Babe Ruth did it. But then you add, the cultural icon, the cultural phenomenon that Shohei is in Japan. So I think it's kind of two-sided. It's what he offers the game. It's what he has done for the game. It's how talented he is. It's how he impacts the game. But it's also the cultural impact in his home country as well.
It leads to this Beatles-like phenomenon, Beatles dated reference for some of you, but remembering seeing the video footage in the 50s of, screaming girls that were chasing down the Beatles. Like I said, Taylor, great example, in her big summer tour a couple of years ago, one of my dear friends is her drummer. And it was amazing to find out, like, they had to book, 10 hotel rooms in every city they were in because they couldn't let people find out what city they were actually or what hotel they were actually staying in. That's a level of phenomenon we don't really see in America the same way. And I think it does speak to just the iconic meaning that Shohei has, not just to the sport of baseball, but also to the country of Japan. And it's so hard to see this. Like, maybe in some ways, Michael Jordan was the American equivalent. Michael Jordan at his peak was sort of that guy that everywhere he walked into, it hit differently, particularly for a sport as global as basketball is. Like the NFL, whatever we want to say about viewership in America, the NFL is not nearly the same global sport that basketball is. So, when you start talking about the Michael Jordans of the world, you're talking about somebody that appeals to a much larger global audience. When he walks into China, things shut down because he's Michael Jordan, as opposed to, Tom Brady doesn't necessarily have that same level of cachet. So I'm thinking Jordan might be the best equivalent I can think of in my lifetime of an American athlete with this sort of a global appeal, but even that feels like it fails in comparison.
See, and it's funny because coincidentally, I would say LeBron James is that in the United States. And I think that it could just be a generational difference that I don't remember when Michael Jordan was playing. My era of basketball is LeBron James. LeBron James is, there it is. He's globally recognized that if you ask anyone anywhere, show him a picture of LeBron, who is this person, everybody's going to know who it is. I think they're both like that, though. I mean, it's definitely generational differences, but I think both Michael Jordan and LeBron James have superseded popularity of the United States or of the game of basketball. They have reached global popularity. I also think
I'll add Kobe to that too, by the way, quick. I'll say Kobe also falls in that same range. Like when he went overseas, it seems maybe it's because they're not wearing helmets. Maybe it's because it's the NBA and they do have a larger international audience. But I think Kobe, Michael, and LeBron all sort of were trying to be close to, although I don't think any of them have really hit the same peak that Shohei hits.
And Kobe still posthumously. You'll still see, morals and memoriams for Kobe Bryant anywhere across the globe still to this day. So yeah, I think that's a great call by you. I think it's also the game of basketball is globally popular. So that I think helps, whereas the game of football is not as globally popular. Like I think Tom Brady in the United States probably carries a similar level of cachet of a LeBron James or a Michael Jordan locally in the US, but the NFL just is not as popular in China or Europe or wherever it might be. I think it's also, it can be hyper localized as well. Like I think Shohei in Japan has the same level of popularity of Tom Brady in Boston, or I'll use, my alma mater, Joe Burrow in Baton Rouge. He probably can't even get out of the car in Baton Rouge because he's going to be swarmed by people. He is he is literally like praised like a god in Baton Rouge, which is where I think the kind of impact and popularity Shohei has in Japan. Obviously, it's a much smaller, hyper localized area, but still the same level of impact.
Yeah, and I think part of this, too, that stands out to me as interesting is that the American system, for becoming that popular, almost requires a divide. Whether it's right or wrong, at some point you're loved and hated. The more popular you get in America at whatever you do. You mentioned Tom Brady. For everybody that loves Tom Brady, there's somebody else that also hate watches Tom Brady because they don't like the Patriots or they didn't like the Flakegate or whatever. They just don't like the fact that he's, had supermodel wives. Whatever the answer is, there seems to be some sort of a clapback. We mentioned LeBron earlier. Well, for every LeBron lover, there's a LeBron hater. Like, even if you look at somebody like Caitlin Clark that means so much to the WNBA, for every Caitlin Clark supporter, there's somebody over there that's just sort of screaming the opposite about the way the popularity of the WNBA at this point. Like, it feels like we as a country are more divided. Shocking, that's breaking news. But it also feels like the way that we even cover the ascension to superstardom of our athletes is far less adored and far more torn down than things culturally like Shohei in Japan. I mean, we're not in Japan. Maybe I'm unaware of a massive negative Shohei Japanese sort of undertone that I don't know of. But certainly here, I struggle to think of any star in any sport that doesn't have a group of haters somewhere, because that's the way America works for everybody we build up. We build them up to tear them down.
I think we're just so culturally different from one another in the United States, and that's a beautiful thing in the United States, but we're also so culturally different from Japan that, when Ichiro Suzuki was at the peak of his game, he was also idolized in Japan. That, the Japanese people can look at their own and say, that is ours. That is somebody who comes from our country, who shares our same culture, that is making a global impact and a global difference. And also the game of baseball is incredibly popular and incredibly important in Japan. I think that in the US, we are all so culturally different. Our interests are so wildly different. Like, we are so far ingrained into our sports world that sometimes it's like shocking to me that people who are even very close to me, like their world doesn't stop, their life doesn't stop, their day doesn't stop because Daniel Jones got tagged, or because we have March Madness coming up, or they don't avoid fall weddings because it's football season, because that's just my world and my life, and it can be so different from somebody else's. And again, I know that that's so incredibly biased because I am an American and I live in America and I am ingrained in American culture. I'm not from Japan. I've never been to Japan. I'm not ingrained in Japanese culture. So, of course, I have a bias there. My perspective of American culture is going to be wildly different from Japanese culture because I don't live it every single day. But it is hard to believe that somebody is so widely beloved and idolized and propped up on a pedestal the same way that Shohei is in Japan that we have in the United States. It has to be hyper-localized because we are so wildly different from one another.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, hell, like I was with a good friend of mine on Saturday, and the UConn basketball game was on in the background, and he literally looked at me and said, I don't understand why people care about sports, which is just an example of how different all of us can be. Like, you and I have jobs because so many people care about sports, but there are certainly a ton of people in our country that just don't. And even look at the Olympics, love it or hate it, without getting into any political stance on anything ever, it is easy to see that even our Olympians were doubted by some loudly, yelled at by some loudly. Like, even Olympians, which for most countries become very galvanizing in a together moment, for us was divisive at some level for some people, and social media showed that. So to your point, it's interesting because part of what makes Shohei interesting is that he's maybe the best we'll ever see. So already that's going to be difficult to top. When you are a GOAT, it's difficult to top. But on top of that, the global popularity is impossible to put a real quantification around. By the way, while we're talking baseball, step up to the plate, play fantasy baseball. It is that time already. You can create a private league with your crew. You can draft instantly in a public league with other fans. Get into it. We're gonna, maybe we should play a fantasy baseball as a show. Should we get a little fantasy baseball? Caroline, you would kick my ass.
I'm here for
fantasy baseball. You would devour me in fantasy baseball, but I'd be in. I mean, I would be in. As long as there is no rule against as many Dodgers as I want on my team, for my beloved. I don't know. You kick my ass.
You're not allowed
fantasy
to do
baseball
that.
is back.
You cannot just stockpile Dodgers.
I mean, you got rules I'm not following. I like this. Maybe we'll get a Yahoo Fantasy Baseball, Yahoo Sports Daily Fantasy Baseball League. It's now going to come. It's gonna be a thing. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Come hang out with us again. She's Caroline Felton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.